Your indoctrination, David Bassett continues to write, more than likely continued with textbook claims that it was the variation in size and shape among the beaks of the alleged 13 species of finches native to the Galapagos, an equator-straddling volcanic archipelago that lies some 600 miles, 765 kilometers off the west coast of Ecuador, which Darwin visited in 1835, that powerfully crystallized the idea of evolutionary gradualism via natural selection into Darwin's mind. The beaks do vary, but the amazing thing is, as we'll learn in a moment, during drought, plants survive that have larger hard nuts, and the finches with tiny beaks can't crack those, so they die. Now, in determining what has happened on the Galapagos, they use a count. They use an average. Well, after a few weeks, if you can't eat, you die, particularly if you're a bird. But here again, we've been victims of revisionist history because despite the common myth, Darwin did not deduce his theory under the eureka-like inspiration of seeing the finches on the Galapagos. That's what a technical journal states. So we want to get to the facts. The 14 species of Darwin's finches all live on the Galapagos Islands except the Cocos Island finch B. The medium ground finch K is the species that has been most intensively studied. Note the differences in their beaks, and there is a difference, but Dr. Caldwell has already covered that by stating that during drought times only the larger nuts survive. So only those who have larger beaks that can crack those nuts among the finches would survive. Those who couldn't crack them had to live elsewhere, and you can't get elsewhere, so they see their demise. The Galapagos Islands have almost nothing to do with Darwin's formulation of his theory. We're trying to be scientific in this analysis. They're not discussed in his diary of the Beagle voyage, except for one passing reference, and those diaries are available. They're published. Just one passing reference. And they are never mentioned in the Origin of Species. In fact, Darwin was so unimpressed by the finches that he made no effort while in the Galapagos to separate them by island. He took a few dead birds, but he didn't classify anything or even separate them by islands. And as for the claim that the Galapagos finches impressed Darwin as evidence of evolution, science historian Frank J. Sulaway wrote, "Nothing could be further from the truth." And here we have a secular journalist and with a major in history writing this. As far as Charles Darwin's contribution is concerned, the Darwin in Darwin's finches is largely mythical. It wasn't until almost a century after Darwin that they assumed their present status as icons of evolution. So just how did the propaganda phrase Darwin's finches originate? Jonathan Wells' eye-opening book, Icons of Evolution, provides for us the misleading misnomer, misleading misstatement. Although they were first called Darwin's finches by Perry Lowe in 1936, an entire century after his voyage. Never until then were they called Darwin's finches. A full century after the return of the Beagle, Percy Lowe, the finches of the Galapagos in relation to Darwin's conception of species from ibis. It was ornithologist David Lack who popularized the name a decade later. Lack's 1947 book, Darwin's Finches, by Cambridge University Press, summarized the evidence correlating variations in finch beaks with different food sources and argued that the beaks were adaptations caused by natural selection. No, they were adaptations with the information that was already in the beaks, in the finches to start with. In other words, it was Lack more than Darwin who imputed evolutionary significance to the Galapagos finches. Ironically, it was also Lack who did more than anyone else to popularize the myth that the finches had been instrumental in shaping Darwin's thinking. Now, something did shape Darwin's thinking. he became an absolute atheist, and after Annie's death, his little 10-year-old daughter, are you awake?
Yes.
After Annie's death, he never referred to God in a personal dimension, personal relationship, and he never mentioned Annie's name again. A part of him died. And I understand, I've lost a child. How long? Now, I don't understand why he never mentioned her name again. I don't understand why he abandoned even a personal mention of God. If you ever need God, it's with the loss of a child.